Hello,
Hello.
everyone.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Yes, you do.
I know we were streaming last week. I nearly forgot that.
Hmm.
So we're talking today about the founder mode. Um, Not a new topic, but it became popular recently by the Airbnb CEO talking about how to or how founder mode can or let's say can be a good thing while others say oh it's not a good thing. But we know that from many companies out there like I think one most prominent one is probably Steve Jobs, right? Maybe Mr. Zuckerberg, those kind
Elon
of
Musk.
people. Elon
Yeah.
Musk, I think he's the
So
most
founders
popular
who
one.
run their own companies, that's the frame.
Yes, who's still firing the people on the floor when they see them. So
That's
founder
not
mode
that's
is,
not a necessary ingredient, but it does solve a certain problem.
but yeah, it basically fits to all the people we have just mentioned. So yeah.
Sort of.
So what is founder mode? And the big topic for today is not just talking about what you can listen to on the internet. It's about how founder mode actually works in startups and tech-driven software startups, right? Because this is where the let's say the majority of our audience is about or is in, and founder mode is very prominent. And when you take a look at LinkedIn and when you take a look at advisories, people try to actually get you more into the direction of manager mode. This is what I see. I don't know how you see or how you experience it, but I see that people try to get you more into the scale up mindset, into delegate, manage things instead of doing it yourself as a founder. But still, especially let's say companies around 10, 20, maybe 30 people are so often still directly led by the founder, him or herself. That would be an interesting thing. How do you perceive it?
I think founders should run their own companies for as long as possible.
Interesting.
That would be my
I would I
that would
would
be my
have
stance.
thought that I would have thought that you were basically thinking differently in that case.
Okay, why?
I don't know, since I don't know. I would have thought you were thinking like, hey, try to get as early as possible in a delegation mode, delegation quadrant. Because maybe because of the things we have discussed with how
Hmm.
to approach, let's
Well,
say, the development cycle and approaches
hmm
TDD and those kind of things.
well, that's a good point. Thinking back, I got a question this week from one of my coaching clients. They are swamped with support tickets, and they asked me, "Hey, do you think it's a good idea if we hire a head of support to manage the communication?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Yes, that's great for communication, and it's terrible for your product." And they said, interesting. I did not expect that discrepancy." And they asked me to explain, and I said, "Well, look, what you want is you want there to be no telephoning going on between customers and engineers. If the
Hmm.
engineers are swamped with support, that means that 3 months ago they delivered something of very poor quality to customers without validating for quality, without
Hmm.
validating if it is useful, is this meeting expectations, were we right on how urgently you need it and you'll actually use it the day we deploy it? Like, did we communicate correctly? Is the cadence there? What expectations set? Was it announced properly? Was hype created? Was branding on point? The engineers are being pressured right now to slow down to improve the quality. Feedback is pressuring them to slow down, to take
Hmm.
quality seriously. That doesn't mean that engineering has to slow down in regards to efficacy. It's just a signal that quality has to be increased. That means that if you now take this pressure and apply it to the head of support instead, they will create a dam.
Hmm.
And that dam will eventually burst. And as a consequence of the pressure not being there for the engineering team, if they haven't learned anything, then now they will create the same level of bad quality software faster
Hmm.
at bigger volume, which means that the next time you have this issue, the dam is going to fill up faster.
Yeah.
So at some point, the dam will burst, and you'll either have to swamp development or you have to tell your customers to go F themselves. if any of these situations happen, it's better to swamp them now, although damage is still small, or it's better to tell your customer that you cannot prioritize them now while the waiting period is still small and they'll still kind of on your side and understanding. So there isn't an outcome where telephoning and delegating to somebody who is not an engineer makes sense in that situation. However, what I did say, what I did offer as a solution is what was, I think, more aligned with this founder mode idea is empower one of the developers to pair with somebody in support and make it their priority to only handle customer tickets. And as long as they don't learn how to do that properly and how to detach themselves from the prioritization of the product engineering side, you be there with them and see what they're struggling with.
As a founder?
That is what I will, as a founder, yes. And he's a CTO, right? So he's a founding engineer, tech lead who grew into CTO, and like a startup that is now becoming a scale-up, right? So I've been with him on the journey from founding engineer to tech lead to CTO. Now he's struggling with this idea: should I go manager mode or founder mode? And I would much rather, don't delegate until you know how to do it properly, and then delegate only the decision to do it better than you could. Never delegate the execution, right? So if you're telling somebody what to do, you'll always have to tell them. So you're not actually saving your time, right? So if you just delegate the execution, you're not saving much time. You're just making it harder by increasing the level of people the information has to go through. So yeah, what do you think? How would you solve like the main founder mode, manager mode split? Like where, at what size, at what decision point?
I don't think it's about size. I think it's about how long is the influence of you as a founding person actually good for the entire product process for the business, especially for the business, and when it's not. That's actually the point. So we all.
I have an example actually for when it's not. If you're a CTO, for example, who can code, so you're technically very able, but you haven't coded in a while. And if you were to code in your code base, you would have to be onboarded. So your team would have to teach you how to code again in your code base because you've been so detached. I would say that's too far down the manager mode side. Right? So you should be able to, if needed, still understand what it's like to go through the crucial processes. Now, in a small organization, I don't expect the same level of standard for an organization that has 10,000 engineers. That would be silly. That's an unrealistic ask.
But let's keep the context for today for small to maximum medium-sized businesses.
Because, absolutely.
I don't think that we are, first of all, qualified to really talk about how founder mode is working in a foundation with 10,000 engineers. And it makes sense we have a lot of, let's say, CEOs, CTOs, founders of small to medium-sized businesses here in the audience. I know that just from the LinkedIn and Substack audiences. And there is always this question, do I actually do something wrong? Can I trust my people? There are different reasons why you actually go into founder mode and whatnot. Sometimes it's simply, I don't trust my people. Sometimes it's, hey, I am simply, the driving person here. I want to be there. And actually you are in founder mode while you are actually a quite good leader. But oftentimes you are in founder mode and a quite awful micromanager. So you can have both, because founder mode is, of course, when we saw what Paul Graham was writing, the Y Combinator guy, it was a lot about micromanaging and the concern about that. But in my opinion, founder mode is not micromanaging. You can be a good founder amongst your people, so not above them, amongst them, and be a good leader at the same moment, and have a very good feeling for how to delegate things, when to delegate things, and when to do things yourself. Because one thing, people shouldn't forget one thing. You will never get, or never say never, but the common case is that the founding person does always have more reason to do something right and now and today
Mm-hmm.
than any other in the company. And this is not just today, it is an ongoing thing. That's the reason why
Mm-hmm.
you're actually a founding person. And this is the main driver why we see that. This is something we shouldn't forget. I am such a person as well. So I was always in founder mode. There was never a time when I was in a
Mm-hmm.
pure delegation mode. Never. And I think I'm even not the person for this, to be honest. I understand this and I understand the ideas. We have those conversations on LinkedIn. We have those 1,000 times about when a CTO should become a managing person instead of being, in the trenches with the people. In small to medium sized businesses, let's stick with small business. Everything 20, 30, 40 people maximum. I would still say having the founder as a leadership person, not a manager, not a
Mm-hmm.
micromanager, as a leadership person, as a role model amongst the people, is a huge benefit, in my opinion. Of course, I am a founder, right? That's maybe the perspective of people matters, but I know from conversations around the last 15 years that there is. So this is what I actually heard. This is not really what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in that myself, of course, but I have that as feedback as well. I had feedback in a negative sense as well. That's so I learned out of that. But in my opinion, founder mode is not necessarily something bad. It isn't, and we shouldn't see that as this is a tyrant person. So we shouldn't take a look at Elon Musk, right, and say, hey, that's a typical founder of a 10 people company. That's not the case, and we need to understand, first of all, the differentiation between leadership and management. And especially the founders should, right? So you can be an ignorant founder who's just doing everything. I know those people. I know many of them personally. I work with those indirectly and sometimes directly. And it's very
Mm-hmm.
awful to work with another company, with another CTO who is in founder mode as well, but an ignorant version of just do what I say and don't think yourself. This is what I dislike. But this is founder mode as well. So founder mode is not specific. It's a very broad term. Would you agree to that? What would you say?
You mentioned that Elon Musk might not be a great example for founder mode, but I think we're looking about it from the wrong perspective. Like we're trying to find things to hate about it, or like about it, or not like about it. And I think it would make much more sense to talk about the trade-offs. So not about what is founder mode and what is manager mode, but
Mm-hmm.
what is founder mode compared to manager mode? What is manager mode compared to founder mode? So what are the key differences? What are the key replacements in behavior and process, and potentially even culture? I just want to say hello real quick to Raul, Peter, Ion, Kaloyan. Chat is bugged. So Maria, yes, Maria didn't sync up with her channel. I see you. Hello from
Is
Brazil.
it
Hello
you
from
or me
Ukraine.
lagging? So, audience, can you please tell if this guy or me is lagging right now?
Am I lagging?
I don't
I'll
know.
close
You are
LinkedIn.
lagging
It's
for me,
probably
but
LinkedIn.
I always see my video quickly,
It's
right?
probably LinkedIn. Let me close it. Is it good now? Is it good now?
No, it's not. Actually, not for me, but maybe Kaloyan will probably tell us as the manager of the fan club, right? Okay,
Can you hear me
let's
well and it's just the video lagging, or is the audio terrible?
both. It is lagging both
Both.
at the
Okay.
same time.
Okay. Then I'll rejoin real quick. Give me a moment. I'm not hitting the red button.
Please no. This is my job to. Okay. Both are fine with me. Okay, great. So let's quickly wait. I think he will rejoin in a second. Then we can go ahead with a pretty nice topic, to be honest. Still lagging both. Oh, great. Okay, now we're getting some more. Okay, so just as some how you can participate on this stream right now, we will show all comments on screen, and you can basically, or we can then basically discuss about that. You can even give us a follow up or feedback to that, so you can participate. So let us know, especially if you are in a company which is led by a founder directly, or you're thinking to become a founder yourself, or you are a founder yourself and you are not sure if you're doing it right or wrong, or maybe you have doubt or something like that. Just let us know. We will basically continue to talk about that during the stream. Take this opportunity and chance, and there he is. Not no, not
Yeah.
okay. Now
Is
he
it better?
is. Good. Good. Already marking comments. Good. So, to be honest, I forgot where we were stopping.
Well,
But
you asked me a question, and
did
you
I?
know, in the comparison frame of founder mode versus manager mode, I think it's much easier to just talk about trade-offs. So you already mentioned, this idea between typical managers taking over organizations. I think I think founder mode versus manager mode makes sense in the context of the Western model, right? So the Western model, very simplified, has like three major types of cultures. A pathological culture is all about power, who has power. Then there's a bureaucratic culture, which is what are the rules and policing. You might have also seen this sort of in the agile police and similar with frameworks like SAFe and Scrum, where there's just way too much like weird rituals and rules to follow. And then there's the generative culture, which is all about collaboration, training people, learning new things. That's more the extreme programming side. So that's more towards the outcome that extreme programming is targeting. Both founder mode and manager mode can be pathological, can be completely toxic, can be completely negative. And I think we have heard good stories and bad stories about the people we mentioned about being founder mode leaders, the Musks, the Jobses, the Jeff Bezos, etc. So I would much rather focus on the productive side, which is what does founder mode allow? Right. So from my perspective, founder mode allows the bypass of bureaucracy. Right. So it is going from this rule-oriented communication style to either more intense collaboration on the generative side, or pathological behavior, micromanagement, and sort of power abuse and power hoarding, gatekeeping behavior, etc. So I think you can be in founder mode and be negative or be positive. With manager mode, what's really, with manager mode, what you can do is you can scale an organization on the lower echelons, right? So if you need to open up a lot of offices that are equally organized units and they're sort of just the same product in different countries, and then just basically implementing the laws of the local country and sort of innovating to a very small degree, then manager mode allows you to go from that rule-based system where you have a lot of rules, and then you encourage the local leaders to sort of do collaboration within the allotted rules. Maybe there's a rule book, maybe there's a guide on how to train your office. That's your typical McDonald's. That's McDonald's screams manager mode, right? So it's just this, every level of the hierarchy has a guidebook on how this manager needs to behave, how that person needs to behave. There are very clear expectations, but they are there to foster more collaboration and better outcomes to the customers rather than centralizing power. That can also be negative in the sense that maybe the rules are there to limit power. For example, a CTO that goes fully into manager mode and says delegates everything, and he only empowers a few key people through which everybody has to go to deploy to production, to get PRs merged, to verify schema changes in the database, to procure new hardware, to rent new SaaS products, right? So it's both of them can go bad and good, but there are different styles of working. What I prefer about founder mode for smaller companies is that generally you would see this in founder mode startups. What you see a lot is that the engineering managers are not in the vertical, which I really like. Right, so it's the tech lead communicating with the CTO, and the engineering manager is on the side. They're not in the communication loop. They are there to make sure that the people are being taken care of, and if they have promotions to do, that they are being promoted and they are being moved in between teams. So the engineering manager acts more like a liaison for HR and a sort of team lead, but not a tech lead. That distinction I really like. Once the company grows, you get second line managers, and that distinction like blurs very quickly. I've seen that backfire a lot when the engineering manager position is not stratified in comparison with the tech lead. So that's generally a very difficult transition for any kind of scale up. That's in founder mode. In manager mode, what I see a lot is that you get these manager titles: product manager, engineering manager, relations manager, this manager, that manager, and then you have an engineering team of 10 people and 9 managers above them, which are all peers, and they don't report to a second line management sort of hierarchy. They report each to their chiefs of department, and then that whole management structure is just a delegation hell. Everybody's telephoning down and across departments that they don't know how to execute, they don't know how it works, they don't know how to coach the engineers or the product people, the marketing people to do stuff. And what everybody's sort of screaming for is more cross-functional functionality. From the perspective of team topologies, this is something to avoid, right? So generally when there are these pulls for inter-department collaboration, the solution isn't to learn how to collaborate with the departments. The solution is to tear down the department and create a team that doesn't require the handoff. So in short,
that's very general, right? That's
a small founder mode organization would optimize having as little handoffs as possible, to the point of maybe having none, if the founder is more active. Now, I'm sort of generalizing. I'm assuming the founder would be a founding engineer who's grown into CTO role. If the founder is non-technical and it's more of a product person, or just a person who owns the organization, is more entrepreneurial, I don't know what that would look like. I think from all of the people that I've known to be in founder mode, and I've often been in founder mode in the companies that where I had a stake in, everybody who acted like that was either heavy on product or heavy on or heavily technical. I don't know what a non-product, non-engineering founder mode person would sort of contribute to the engineering org, from this context. Maybe that's the pathology. Maybe that's the problem. When you have a micromanager who doesn't, understand either department in great detail.
You can't be a micromanager if you don't know the context. You are in the domain. You need to know the domain. And
you can manage, right? So you can ask them to do bureaucracy without telling them what to do. Your micromanagement can be toxic by virtue of demanding a lot of bureaucracy, right? So that's the agile police, right? So that's your Scrum Master, for example. It's a typical pathology that might have originated at some point in founder mode, but now it's just this like weird. I don't think Scrum Masters are popular anymore, but the Scrum Master was this kind of project manager / coach / something in between. Product managers, product owners have I think a similar bad rap, where they are policing the team rather than teaching them and delegating them. The delegation is great when you're delegating power, when you're delegating authority, when you're delegating decision making.
Okay, but this
delegation is really, kind of pointless when you just...
That all doesn't really explain founder mode in small businesses. So maybe we should go more into what is in reality there. So when I take a look at let's stick with small companies for now and then go to the next step. The small companies, I'm not sure if I know a company where you don't have founder mode going on. That's the
Mm.
first thing. So and right now we have the feeling that, or when we hear about that, it's actually something negative. I have that exact same feeling about when I read evergreen content on LinkedIn, that this is the case of other people say, yeah, but we are like, we should avoid that. We should go into delegation, otherwise you can't scale. The point is that
Mhm.
many of the small companies don't have the target for large scale. They just want to do their stuff. They love their autonomy. This is a generational thing. So we have generations right now who don't want to become millionaires. They just want to have a good life while being autonomous in what they do, right? This is something very intriguing, to be honest, because it is possible these days and you could do that. And having a founder in that mode, so founder mode in that case, is a different thing than having the typical founder who says, hey, I'm bootstrapping something, or we have an investor and I'm working between the investor and the company. I'm pushing everything forward. I'm pulling everyone forward no matter what. So those, I think those are the two extremes when we take a
Okay.
look in founder mode. What's the entire spectrum there? None of those
Mhm.
both are managing modes. It is like in one mode, the founder is there as the typical leader who's creating a balanced environment, which is moving slowly forward but steady, very stable. It is a very secure environment, very good culture early on in that process. While on the other
Mhm.
side, when you don't perform, you get kicked out of the company while you don't even know why, because this is often based on a gut feeling, because your founder, or not your founder but the founder of the company, had 3 bad nights and was pointing the reason or for that bad nights onto you, and then you are basically
Mhm.
out, right? That's
Mhm.
this is the negative part, that the, let's say, the emotional founder acts, this typical Elon Musk person in this case, but this is probably not the best example for small companies. But actually, I don't really have public small companies examples. Maybe I have one. Theo Brownie. Probably people know them from T3. Theo, GG. I don't know. From YouTube. That's a guy with a blonde hair and this mustache. And he is actually, doing a lot of, let's say, founder driven things, talking about his
Mhm.
ideas. He's against multiple things where many developers are pro, like in that case, just because he's thinking about his business, how to drive it forward, and he's
Mhm.
basically working on site. So he's what he is able to basically see and sense. This is basically his intel where he is making decisions. This is how I perceive
Mhm.
it. And the other way around is a little bit like, you are between the people, you ask for their feedback, you ask that they contribute, but you make clear
Mhm.
that the last decision is yours. This is a more balanced approach. And you take the people with you, you pass them a little bit of ownership, but you don't make them subordinates, or actually, you don't make them sub managers, let's say it like this. So they
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
really have accountability of what they do. It is more like they can start to participate. And oftentimes, those people who do that will become somewhere in the future team leaders when the company scales. This is
Mhm.
maybe some point where I see that. But I really try to find real world examples for that. When I take a look at myself, so how I did that in my past, I think I did that
Mhm.
in both spectrums. But very early on, I was in this bad spectrum because I would say it was, uh, let's say, it was the zeitgeist back then to be a little bit more, let's say, founder driven in smaller
Mhm.
companies. And then it changed a little bit. The generations changed. I saw that the
Yeah.
developers were more autonomous. They valued more time over money and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So they wanted to have a good environment, a place, a workplace where they like to join on Monday morning, and they don't really wait for Friday. It is more like they wanted to have a place where they actually can thrive, but don't burn out in the process. And I think that made me change myself. That made me leave my old company, made an exit there, and created something new. And I would say the new company I have founded with my partner is exactly that. So it is more this balanced approach, and we don't have this idea of how we need to scale. And the results of that, in my opinion, is we have a way better relationship between developers and everyone else in the company than it was before. So they saw us as the bosses beforehand, and these days it's more like it's a little bit more like the team lead. I would say I feel more like a team lead person than actually being a CTO. So no one really sees me as a CTO because the decisions I do there on this high level, no one really cares about those, so they don't know about that. And what they actually see is what I do when I'm in the trenches. So I'm still in the trenches. I'm even more in the trenches than I was a year ago, just because things have changed, and I'm actually happy about that. And there it's more like this typical this sergeant, right, among the teams. So you help with your experience, but you leave enough ownership and responsibility to the people so that they can solve. So I was talking about the 15 minutes rule, for example. Sometimes it's not really 15 minutes, but let's have a little bit of time, like 15 minutes to an hour, where people need to try to find a solution. And after that, they really need to come and find a solution together, not because someone wants to control them, but because this is a team effort and we need to get to the finish line somehow. So we need to understand this. This is carrying your part of the burden as a part of a team. You need to get forward. It's not only about but we need to wait for you, need to take care for you until you learn that. No, we need to learn in iterations and not with a first task, which means that we need to have a constant progress. And I think a founder in founder mode can lead this constant progress like no one else. But this is not scalable. This is just for smaller companies a suitable thing, because it is very unlikely to find a typical team leader as an employee in a large company like this, because those people are normally going for more high level or high levelly leadership positions than just team lead in the team, which is the reason why you have those small, in my opinion, that's the main reason why so many small companies are actually so agile and flexible in what they do, because they have exactly implemented this pattern. Yeah, this is what I think. Okay, but I promised we're going into comments. We haven't done that so far. Shall we do that?
Let's go.
I can't hear you.
Want to? Yes. Let's
Now
go.
I can hear you. Okay, so I think that was
Who was this?
Thomas Eichinger. In my opinion,
sure?
leader. What do you say? I can't hear you.
It's okay. Let's continue. Is my microphone okay?
I don't know. I hear you just every second word sometimes. Okay, I just read. In my opinion, a leader with a purpose of leading does not necessarily need to have a role centered on delegated tasks. I believe that leadership is primarily about aligning the group and guiding them onto the same path. There is no inherent need for a leader to delegate tasks, roles, and responsibilities. If there is already a specific role designed for that function, then the role should be the one to fulfill it. What do you think about that?
I can see that there's something going on with my connection, so that's definitely, I can see evidence of there being a problem somewhere, but we don't have enough time to troubleshoot. Can you hear me well? Am I jittery? Am I breaking up?
Right now it's good.
Now it's good. Okay. So to answer Thomas's question, well, it's not a question. So we read the statement. My opinion here is that in small companies, specifically, like let's say up to 100 people, 50 engineering org is 50 people max. The purpose of leadership in such a company is to keep everybody well informed about the overall business strategy. Because it's very easy to forget that you were hired to solve business problems. Engineers, product people, designers, they don't get hired to do engineering. They don't get hired to do product. They don't get hired to do design.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not just there to fill the role. Right. So the point, their existential crisis isn't, oh, the engineer ran out of engineering tasks on his board. That is not why they're there. That is not why they have their salary. They're being paid a salary. So they are exclusively committing time to this company, not to another company. And they're sort of going on a mission or going on a journey to solve problems for this company within their power. That means that all of the important challenges the company has requires talent matching, essentially. You need to put together a feature complete team, and the managerial bias as the company grows is to split the company apart by specialization. So the product people are in the product department, the engineering people are in the engineering department, and the customer sales people are the customer support people in the customer department, the sales people in the sales department, and maybe then there's some overarching links. Maybe product is very close to engineering. Maybe customer support is very close to HR and legal and marketing. Maybe the brand team is very close to product, and maybe the marketing team is very close to founders. But the underlying problem is that this sort of MBA-driven advice is that you need to modularize your company in order to manage it, because it grows out of proportion. And to me, this usually manifests as there is leadership then necessary from the trenches to get cross-department communication going, because the department structure, the cells, no longer match the natural flow of communication. So I think leadership is then giving feedback to the org, hey, guys, we need to reorganize something. And the person communicating this problem and taking ownership of this problem, those become then the natural leaders of the squads, pods, guilds, whatever comes out of that discussion. So I think it's not about delegation, but there is a very strong role in drawing boundaries of what is the role exactly and what is the responsibilities exactly. Because I'm not hiring an engineer to do engineering. I'm hiring an engineer because I see there's a deficit in one team. Like one team requires a specific kind of knowledge, and I'm hiring somebody to fill that void, to support them, to mentor them, to maybe pull up the quality level. That is how I would approach the role and responsibilities aspect of Thomas's comment.
Yeah. And I would add that in the founder mode is all about, or not it's all about, but normally in every type of company, you don't have a totally flat hierarchy. So you always have at least in a very small company, at least a senior person who is primus inter pares. At least this, right? So there is someone already taken over ownership in one form or another. And the problem with the founder mode often is that the founder overrides here and there decisions. And I think this is the main problem. So there is something going on, but it is basically, there is a dysfunction because the founder is constantly doing, let's say, overwriting that, let's say, telling everyone that, hey, I am actually the boss. From time to time, I do decisions. In all other cases, I expect that from you. So there is this uncertainty. And I think this is the big problem which people refer to founder mode when they say this is actually the problem. So you don't know exactly when you are responsible for something and when not. And this leaves this anxiety to make a decision yourself as an employee or as even a team leader who is not sure, hey, I am actually just a, let's say, a proxy, not really a team lead. So I try to
Mm-hmm.
prepare a decision and I ask the founder if it's okay to make this decision. And that should not be the case,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I'm not
I
I'm
mean,
not necessarily thinking that. Yeah.
Zach from Customer Obsessed Engineering wrote up a really cool article about this today, I think. It's a paid article. I'm not sure where the preview line is. I don't think you can see
Zacharias.
it, but yeah,
Okay.
from Boss Logic, yeah. So I don't want to go into detail. It's a paid article. I don't want to spoil it. You can check it out, but it's a great article that highlights this. I have an interesting coaching situation right now where I have one agency, one founder mode client, and one manager mode client. So I find it very easy to sort of draw parallels because I'm talking to them every week, and I do see the differences, notably about delegation. Both leaders asked me, how to approach delegation. Should they force the decision? Should they nurture the decision? Should they sort of guide the decision so it's already made and give them options? What should they incentivize? What should they mandate? Right. So what is the appropriate boundary? How to even set a framework to decide? The leader who is in founder mode, they are like, I don't want to overstep my boundaries, but I also don't want to confuse my team with too many options. Then they asked, what to incentivize, what to mandate. We need to decide on X, on like some CI/CD stuff. Should I mandate that? And I said, well, you could, but then you're responsible, and they're accountable. So you have the influence to say, this was wrong, and it's their fault no matter what. They feel the pain. That's not a good match. So ideally, whoever feels the pain should make the final decision. So you shouldn't mandate what the decision should be if you're not going to be accountable for the outcome of the decision, and if you're not going to feel the pain, other than just feeling the proxy pain of your team now being demotivated. So I told them, mandate that a decision has to be made by a certain time, but don't mandate what the options are. Ask them to come up with options. And then only when they don't come up with options, or they don't want to make a decision, then you figure out if you need to step in. Right, so think of it like an election. The elections say, we will have a new president at that time. That's the rules. The rules don't say that who the president needs to be and what you need to vote. They just say, these are the rules and the decision will be made. And here's how you participate. So I always say, especially if you're in founder mode and you're sort of prone to speaking first, like speaking too early, like you're especially if you're a CTO founder, or if you're a CTPO or sort of the VP of product and engineering, whatever you say has a lot of merit. Even if you say, hey, I'm really interested about that new framework, everybody's starting experimenting with that new framework.
You already have stamped, right?
You stamp the decision. Like you can, your clumsiness can really influence people, especially when you don't want it. So I always tell them, look, mandate the fact that the decision has to be made. So draw clear boundaries, but you don't need a rule book because this is the only time you will make this decision, and you don't need to sort of codify it. Just create a framework that says, we're shifting strategy, we're changing this detail in our strategy, it affects these two teams. We need to move forward with this. We need a decision by Monday. Everybody who wants to chip in, please, on this channel or here, and then just observe what happens. Maybe somebody will come to them privately. Maybe some of them will sort of start preparing documents. Maybe somebody will start preparing documentation, and then you have a meeting, and then you have the best idea win. And ideally, you just mandate that a decision is made, and then you ask them which decision is the least bad or the best one, if it serves the overall objectives of the company, if all the other criteria hold, then that's enough. In manager mode, well, now with the other company, a few weeks ago, they asked me a similar question, and they had a different problem. Because they're in manager mode, there are sort of implied boundaries about what can be questioned and what must not be questioned. So they had a similar issue about quality, about the pipeline, and should we do this or that, or should we like focus on it more or less? Should we have guardrails in place, and to what degree? How do we initiate some kind of improvement in testing culture, engineering quality culture, setting a better quality? And they said because they're in manager mode, the overarching structure is such that nobody's making this decision. Everybody waits for the decision to come top down,
Yes.
usually by the non-technical CEO, to sort of give permission, which means that everybody, because this decision is not coming, everybody who is sort of operating in manager mode is implicitly thinking that making changes is off limits, which means that they are in this sort of self-imposed box and they are complaining about the issue. The CEO is probably too far away, and what information is being telephoned up to them gives them the wrong situational awareness. You might hear that the teams are complaining a lot, not what they're actually complaining about. And it's becoming this sort of self-imposed prison where they think that there's a lot of processes in place that have to be followed, and they're waiting, not even asking, just waiting for a decision to come top down, because obviously the benevolent manager will think about everybody's well-being. Now, what the manager is doing in manager mode, they're actually waiting for their teams to show a little bit more initiative, to be a little bit more autonomous, and to speak with them truthfully, right? So to earnestly, with candor, like communicate even bad news if necessary. And the pathology there is that if bad news is not tolerated, or if there is this blame culture going on where messengers get shot, then it spirals out of control, where you don't want to be the person who complains or brings bad news or suggests initiatives that may derail the project if they're not taken seriously, if there's evidence of neglect. Which means that this founder mode is now so far detached from the problem that everybody is looking up for them to make a decision, yet they don't feel like it's appropriate for them to make the decision. And now everybody's sort of, the longer this goes on, the more immature, the higher the employees stay. They don't grow into somebody who could make that decision. And then only the most assertive, most aggressive, most sort of founder mode people from the trenches, they want to run things their own way because they're unhappy for so long, or they leave. So those are the two realities that I sort of dealing with every week. And it's exactly the same problem, and it's playing out completely differently in both organizations. And of course, the organizations are also quite different, but the engineering organizations of this size generally have similar problems. In this case, they do. But it's funny how differently they're being acted out, how it's sort of pulling on different emotions. The founder mode one was a little bit more inspirational, was a little bit more accountability oriented, whereas the manager mode was a little bit more lethargic and a little bit more sort of seeking help kind of oriented. So that one's more prone to burnout. This one, manager mode, is more prone to burnout and then triaging burnout, whereas the founder mode one is more prone to disengagement, and they're finding new ways to inspire the engineers to actually pick up more responsibility.
I would add something to that, because I think that when we stay in the smaller business context, then everything regarding manager mode is actually very ineffective in basically every aspect. When I take a look, and I have that actually quite right now, I have that we work 90% of our time onto our own product, or products in this case. And doing that, we can make decisions very fast. We can make them in an iterative, agile way, right? We going, but we always do something. There is always movement, and it's always in small steps towards a larger goal, sometimes in the wrong direction, then in the right direction, but overall in a good direction. And as soon as we're doing the other 10%, which is a legacy thing, where we actually work with some other decision makers from other companies, and it goes more and more into management there. So, which means
Mm-hmm.
that we are managed, and even I am managed. And you know me, I'm not the best person to be
Not
managed, right?
manageable.
No, I'm not manageable. So it is very hard for me to see such an ineffective system going
Yeah.
on. I really say that
Mm-hmm.
right now and don't care if it's stream or not. It's extremely ineffective what happens there. This is like you see something and you need to wait for a decision. If a budget for 1 hour is going through, you wait a week and you think to yourself, I just make it in my lunch break, right? Just to
Mm-hmm.
get further. You really get this isn't really working. I see this extreme
Mm-hmm.
inefficiency where even small companies try to implement managers for specific things to get things
Mm-hmm.
done because customers, clients, and users are like that as well. And this is
Mm-hmm.
especially problematic in highly regulated environments, where, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, management is the dominant way to do. But again, we are in the context of small businesses. So on some point in
Mm-hmm.
time, management become inevitable. You need to do that. But when you want to build a company, when you want to found a company, when you are in early investment rounds, when you want to accomplish something, you need to deliver something every year
Mm-hmm.
to either survive, impress some investors, or
Mm-hmm.
just pay somehow the salaries of your people. And
Mm-hmm.
that is what you need to do. You need to find ways to do those things. And in my opinion, if you try that with manager mode, you either are already a multimillionaire, you're just doing that for fun and you can afford that, or you will fail. There is nothing in between. So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
do something and build up something, maybe the autonomous way to have just something where you are your own
Mm-hmm.
boss with let's 10 between 10 20 people. Many companies do that, especially in Germany do that. And or you are
Mm-hmm.
the company who wants to bootstrap yourself and then go into investment rounds and really become something great. In both
Mm-hmm.
ways, you need to have at least one strong founder who is pushing the envelope. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
get nowhere. And
Mm-hmm.
the question is not if you need a founder who is strong. The question is the founder actually aware of that he or she is creating problems or a positive outcome with own behavior and habits. So it
Mm-hmm.
is. I think it all comes down to a habitual problem of the person itself. So you cannot disconnect the driving force from a founder or founders in the early stages. They will always be the dominant. When this is vice versa, that the founders are not the driving forces, then you have a severe
Yeah.
dysfunction and you will be closed soon. That's
I
that's
I
what
was
I
in a
see.
startup. I was in a startup. This was almost 10 years ago now. I was in a startup that was run in a very lean way in founder mode by the founder, non-technical person, very
Mm-hmm.
product oriented, very much understood the craft. It was a physical product. And then as the company grew to 5, 10 engineers, and then growing beyond to like 50, 60 total employees, most of them engineers, because it was essentially e-commerce on steroids. Um, they hired the co-founder, the person who was the investor into the venture. They hired them as CEO, and the founder remained CPO. And they brought along a CTO, and the founder was used to running things in founder mode with product, but then operations and technology were ran in manager mode. So I saw both realities clash, where marketing and sales and branding were done in founder mode, and in
Mm-hmm.
parallel, the e-commerce, the websites, the logistics, the accounting, the fulfillment, that was on a manager mode in parallel in the same company with the same employees. And that was a nightmare. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
like just the clash every time there was some kind of the part overlap necessary between these two realities you could see the verticals have split. People were sitting, there was like a clear border in the office that highlighted the two differences in the communication structures. So I think also having too many founders in in different styles of communication can also be harmful, because I don't think that running that company with the CPO in founder mode would have been successful. The manager mode CEO was actually, creating a lot of order and predictability for the organization. But then just clashing, one is sort of setting up like 2-3 lines of management. The other one just, going in, sitting down next to engineers, starting to shift priorities, going to product, redesigning something, coming back. Like I love that level of collaboration. I would prefer that happening in a real ensembling pairing sense, where you have the station set up and then you actually encourage your founder to do so. But the clash is it's hell. It's hell. It's
It's necessary.
it's that it's like the situation from Office Space, where every employee has like 7 bosses, and then if they do something right, nobody notices, and if they do something wrong, everybody comes to tell them.
Yeah,
All the
but
bosses
every
come
form of
to the
clashes
cubicle
like
to tell
this
them.
are very, very necessary, because otherwise, so let's say every time you have such a clash, you have turmoil,
Mhm.
and you need to have this in order to drive change in one way or another, because
Mhm.
you can't constantly be in a dysfunctional environment where
Yeah.
you need to risk clashes and everyone is afraid of those. So they try to avoid that. So this company would never get to its actual potential if you would have
Yeah.
that situation. So in general,
I
those
like
clashes
I
are
like
actually really good.
I like Stefan's comment. He says, "I feel most founders I met have an idea, not a vision." In this situation in particular, the CPO had an idea, and the CEO, who was in manager mode, had a vision. But in order for them to work together, the CPO had to be sort of grounded in reality. There were some compromises that had to be made that, in their mind, made the product worse. And then there was this constant battle of, was that compromise necessary? Like, is the compromise necessary because we're small and we're proving fit and we're sort of struggling with cash flow, or are we struggling with cash flow and product market fit because we made that compromise, right? So the causality in that case is very difficult. And if you're a founder, if you're very entrepreneurial, that can drive you nuts. My experience there, mostly in engineering departments, is that whatever you do, it's best to stop the telephone game as soon as possible. Vitor had a comment on this. Even if nobody participates, you can say we can take this path because nobody stepped up to discuss the path. This was in context of decision making. I think even better is communicate upfront what decisions have to be made and who's empowered to make the decision, and then just let them make the decision. Like, don't try not to hold meetings about making decisions. Make a decision and then hold a meeting if it was the wrong decision. It's a much better approach, because it helps this sort of idea of, we made this mistake, here's what went well, here's what went wrong, and then we have a meeting to learn from it, and then we course correct. That's a much better way of approaching things, rather than just assuming that every single important decision that has to be made in a meeting. That is also very typical of, we talked about that agile police earlier. That is very typical of manager mode organizations, where they go into a week, a month, or just they write down a roadmap, and then sorry, and then there's this overarching idea that the decisions will be carried out asynchronously by individuals, but the decisions have to be made on a large meeting. And it breeds this sort of worst kind of working culture, especially if you're working remotely. Because in founder mode, I found that it's the inverse. At least with a founder mode who is a benevolent founder who is not micromanaging inappropriately. Juniors might require micromanagement because you're trying to teach them something. You have to be very pedantic about detail if you have somebody very inexperienced, because they need immediate feedback. No, again, that's this and this. No, please, let's do it again. Let's try it again. That was better, but let's try it again. I'm talking about a real beginner, not somebody who's a junior for 2 years. Where was I going with this?
I don't know.
So yeah, the agile police, the management. So in founder mode, I found that what works really well is decisions are made asynchronously, and then the carrying out of the decision, the execution, happens with or without the founder present, so that they're there when the outcome is validated. I found that to be a much more benevolent style of leadership. So for example, you as a founder, you will obsess about meetings, and then you'll just wait for the deployment, and then the day after the deployment, you would wait for a report. How did it go? Like, that's typical manager mode. Instead, what you would probably do is you would write an email. Hey, we're doing this. I can give you more details tomorrow at lunch when we kick off the project. And then you deploy with them, and then you're with them for the major releases. You're with them for talking to the customers. You're with them for figuring out that, hey, we figured something out, we should talk. And then you're sort of in the trenches with your team when there's those, when you figured out that the process that you've set up won't serve, or that the decisions you've made aren't plausible within constraints, that you're with them then, and then you also celebrate with them at launch, and you don't need reporting. You don't need somebody who tells you what's going on, because you have full situational. The what?
It's the GSD mentality, the get shit done mentality.
What's the GSD? What's that? GSD mentality.
Get shit done.
Not aware.
Actually, so you try
I see.
You try to get things done as early as possible.
Yeah.
That's in many management books. Many famous one. Actually, something you start with, but you should get rid of very early on. But during founder mode, the founder cannot, every founder cannot see when things don't move forward. As you said, there is something you wait for approval. And that's so stupid. That's like, why do we need to wait until this is deployed when we see it's deployable?
Yeah.
Deploy it, right? We will get feedback. So is the risk, so if you have clear problems with the risk, then there is reason for that. But this is in 95 or more % of the companies, in most of the times, not the case. So just do it. Just get some feedback and become better in what you do.
Can I? This is a bit impromptu. Can I share something? I got a question during the stream, and first I thought it would be irrelevant, but now that we've talked about this, I won't tell the name. I want to keep. I want to honor the privacy. Thematically speaking, I got a question for someone who is a tech lead, and they are sort of having a clash with their CTO. Their CTO wants to go Git flow. He wants to go do trunk-based development. He's a huge fan of our channel, and he wants to do trunk-based development, right? So they have this clash. I want to do TBD, but my boss said yes. But my boss said no TBD. We should do Git flow because we have a lot of. Because when we have issues, when we have those bugs that we do have, I want them sort of on a branch first, and I want to see them happen, and I want to see them fixed, and I want to see them, right? So this mentality of I want to see problems happening in an isolated environment and then fix them is speaking from similar to how you said, we don't have situational awareness where you have to be reported, but you're waiting for permission, when you're waiting for sign-off, when you're waiting for things to be cleared. This is a culture where the cost of being wrong is very high. And that is the main problem. Right? So the fact that you can't decide between TBD and Git flow, that is the symptom. The underlying cultural issue as a product engineering organization is that when you're wrong, the cost of you being wrong is really big. That means that probably you're doing a lot of unvalidated changes in a huge batch at one go. Well, obviously, your CTO doesn't want you to do TBD, because then those big spikes happen on production. Because maybe nobody's validating for, does it work? Does it serve the customer? Was it a positive surprise? Was it a negative surprise? Was it too expensive to build? Was it too cheap to build? Do we want everything customers need at launch? What does testing look like? What does canary deploy look like? So your problem isn't that you're following the wrong process and now you're being sort of mandated by somebody in manager mode. Your problem is that because they're in manager mode, they don't see the underlying problem, which is exactly this: the cost of being wrong is too large. If you follow TBD with TDD, for example, or BDD, and you deploy small changes every 15 minutes, the cost of being wrong is very small. And you can do Git flow, but that'll also make the cost of using Git flow very large. That's the point, right? So the comparison doesn't make sense if you're coming from a culture that is pathological, that is in manager mode. Mostly what I see with my clients who want to adopt continuous delivery, chunk-based development, TDD, DDD, they tell me they're done, they can't go on like this anymore, they need better quality. The biggest issue is that most of their engineering, most of their SDLC is running in manager mode. Mm-hmm. There was rules set in place, there was an automation to oversee the rules, and now they have the continuous integration police running there, right? So two approvals for merge. I don't know. Database changes need an extra approval. Nobody can touch production, and then you're just policing each other in manager mode, rather than looking at the underlying issue of, hey, if one of the commits has an issue, why is the cost of that going out to production so large? Mm-hmm. That's if you do root cause analysis, that's what you get to. Okay, if I do a commit and has
can you connect that back to the topic of founder mode? I understand this, but I lost the connection to the topic.
Well, the difference is the difference that I have highlighted was in regard to situational awareness. Somebody who is in manager mode will treat the symptoms. Somebody who is in founder mode will have enough situational awareness to see the root cause without having to ask somebody to go investigate and research, because they're close enough to the problem to see, hey, we have a decision to make. It's very easy to make. Why aren't we making it? Let's make the decision. I make the decision right now, right? So, but if they were very far away, they would have to ask somebody to investigate. It's like, okay, TBD versus CD. Let's research. TBD versus Git flow. Let's research. Let's run some experiments. Because they might have zero situational awareness, and they might not even know if it's going to help. So they're going to analyze the symptom in the pathological environment rather than comparing it to one that is generative, that is shift left, that is continuously integrated, not just on a feature branch. And then we have branches and we call it CI, but that's not what continuous integration means. Continuous integration means that you deploy every day. You integrate every day. So,
as a founder, you are very interested in having a constant push forward, and you can't push forward if you're stuck in the present right now, and everything which is postponed onto tomorrow, into a branch, whatever, right, will hold you back. So you either you are like, I would say you are likely to take the risk instead of waiting. That's how I would put it. Yeah. So instead of waiting, you simply take the consequences of maybe a client calling you that something is wrong. So you treated your clients a little bit like canaries, and you will see if something is failing. Then you go for for an excuse. You go and personally excuse yourself, and then you go ahead. But you moved forward. It's a little bit like parking in areas where you're not allowed to park, and you get a ticket, because if you pull a ticket from the ticket box and you do it every time, it's more expensive than to just get from time to time a ticket. That's the very same idea in founder mode. So you just
Until they
do it
automate the check.
until the automated check. But it isn't the case. So, you know,
Because there's a human
can't.
factor. There's a human factor. Yeah.
Exactly. And we, in order to survive, because founder mode is oftentimes survivor mode as well. You take those risks in order to, because you are the founder, right? So you can do that, and
You
you
know what
get
this
used to
reminds
it.
me of? I like this ticket analogy. You know what this reminds me of? Jonathan Stark always says this idea. He's the guy behind hourly billing is nuts. Right? So he's all about outcomes, about value. He's pretty much founder mode, the embodiment of founder mode. And Kent Beck recently wrote about the iron triangle, you know, the cost quality scope. And what this reminded me of is that they both talk, so Jonathan Stark and Kent Beck, they both talk about this idea of scoping last. And I find that manager mode organizations, where the founder is in that sort of delegation, organizational precision mode, they define scope and they want people to execute on the entire scope. And then they're sort of measuring how they're executing on the scope. Whereas founder mode organizations, at least in my experience, I found the scope to be the last variable. So they execute on agility, like, so how quickly decisions are made and what their desired level of quality is, and then they scope on the go. Then they say, well, I'm defining scope anyway, so I just want these two metrics to be, I just want us to make progress while these two metrics are sort of here, quality and cost. And then I will, since I have full situational awareness, I will then help us rescope as we go, because we will learn whether what we're working on is valuable or not. Whereas somebody in manager mode might not have enough situational awareness. They might have had a scope delegated to them, and now they don't question whether the scope is necessary. Now they don't question whether the scope is to be done. You know, manager mode types are this agile police, I find, that say, hey, can you estimate this project for me, please? And it better be 3 months. Or, hey, can you estimate this project for me? We have 12 weeks. Right? So it's this idea of they want to know whether it is possible to deliver in this time for this scope at this quality, rather than there being a founder who says, well, I'm not really sure about the plan, and we have this much time and this much money, so we better have a much better understanding of the plan, 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
And then we do it again. Because I see a lot of people do incremental product engineering. Kent Beck wrote on it as well this week, that in order to do incremental delivery, you first need to do incremental planning, and you also need to know what incremental deployment looks like. Because a lot of people think incremental delivery means, oh, I'm splitting up my project into phases that are smaller than the milestone. That's not the point. The point is that you deliver something, and then you replace that delivery. Or you say, there will be a delivery on Wednesday, I'm just not sure about the scope. So you define the money, you define the quality, and then you say, well, within this time, within this money, within this quality level, I will deliver to you the next best increment I can give, and I will make sure it's useful by the time we have to deploy. And then you decide, hey, okay, well, that was a lot of money for very little scope. Maybe we're very wrong about the plan. Or maybe you decide, well, actually, that was useless. So maybe we're wrong about the priorities in the plan. Maybe we should actually do that risk thing first to even validate, cross-cutting everything first. And get the other departments on board now while it's expensive and early, rather than waste money at the end. So I think that speaks much more to sort of this founder mode mentality of have the person who controls, who has the ultimate say on scope in the room at all times. Or at least just have them with full situational awareness so that they're not being telephoned information. This is typical extreme programming. This is typical for small organizations where there's like one hop to the founder or to the person who's driving, the business strategy.
Okay.
That's enough from me.
I have to go soon, so I would like from my side to wrap up. I don't know how is it for you today.
Good. Wrap up. Good. Yes.
Good, good, yeah, it's good.
Good. Yeah.
Good. So I take a chicken wrap, please. I'm not vegan. Okay, never mind. So we were talking about founder mode today, and why founder mode is something very essential to understand, because it is the predominant form of leadership in small to medium-sized companies. In medium-sized companies, the larger they become, the more you see management, the basically management mode going up, and but there are examples for founder mode in basically all company sizes. We saw that in with we talked about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and those kind of people. So this is nothing which is bad and not good at the same moment. So what I mean by that, or so how I perceive the topic is, it is not so much about if the leader is still present in everyday's business. It is how the leader in that moment or the founder is present.
Yeah.
So what type of culture is this person nurturing in that moment? Or is it even nurturing or simply dominating something? I was often speaking about a dominant culture, which I dislike. This is the typical culture where you have the gatekeeper person, oftentimes a senior or even the founder, who needs to be asked to do something. So no one is really making decisions. Everyone is preparing decisions and asking for permission to do so, which means that you basically limit potential of many people, which can be, when you're just three people, can be okay. But as soon as you become 20, 30 people, it's definitely a waste. And this is, I think, the core essence of how I would see this topic. So are you a founder mode micromanager, or are you a founder mode leadership type of person? And this is my personal takeaway from today's discussion.
That's a good.
Ist gut, ja?
Gut, ja. Sehr gut.
Sehr gut.
Also, danke, Karl, Stefan, Victor, Raul, Thomas. Thomas, it's been a while. We've noticed your absence, and it's very lovely to have you here with us again.
I didn't, because I was absent.
Your absence was also noted, Adrian. We really missed you.
No one missed me.
Well, on that topic, on topic of absences, I'll be absent.
What?
In 2 weeks.
It's okay when I'm absent, but not when you are.
I'll be absent in the next 2 weeks. So next week I'll be streaming, but not on this channel, because we're talking to Dave Farley with the Grow CTO community. We're having a discussion about DORA metrics and TDD with Dave Farley next week at this time. 1 hour later, but it's going to be a similar format with Covid, whom you might know from the Grow CTO community, and he sort of pulled some strings and got Dave onto the show so that we can ask him some questions. I'm hoping we can get Dave onto this channel as well afterwards, so I'm fingers crossed. There's that. I'll drop a link in the description if you're interested, but you can probably find it from my channel. And in 2 weeks, I'll be in Bucharest on the How to Web conference. And I'll have a short presentation about extreme programming and similarly things that we had today, but it was more oriented about this idea from fear to courage, where your people in manager mode might be afraid to do certain decisions, and then they're constantly waiting for approval that never comes because the higher ups are thinking that it's not their responsibility. They don't want the responsibility of making the decision. So I'll be in Bucharest for a week, and then I'll be back with you on second week of October. I'll try to stream something from Bucharest if my internet and the situation allows. That I think that could be fun. And if next week isn't in the cards, maybe I'll ask if I can restream over here, or if I can have like a pre-show with you guys. Adrian will still discuss that.
What?
To have some plan for next week. Yeah, like if the Dave Farley interview is an hour later than this, so maybe we can have a short stream to have a quick discussion, or maybe have a discussion about TDD and I don't know. We can plan. If we keep it short, we can plan, and we can keep both things on the schedule. Other than that, I'll see you soon-ish.
Okay.
Okay.
Then thank you everyone for listening, and see you next week. We will announce the topic. Goodbye then.
Awesome.
I will
Ciao.
let some music here running, and I wish you a great day, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
If I find the buttons.